These are the spectators that were watching.
Engines at 65%, 3 engines running normally, 3 good fuel cells, 3 good APUs. Velocity 2,257 feet per second, altitude 4.3 knots.
This is raw, unedited video, just sent via satellite.
Engines throttling up, 3 engines now at 104%. Challenger, go with throttle up.
The picture you were just seeing was Christa McAuliffe's parents watching in horror. These are the students from her school.
Flight controllers here looking very carefully at the situation. Obviously a major malfunction.
Many of them probably had their view blocked just as we did with the television cameras, with just a huge fireball and a huge cloud of smoke. They may not realize yet what has happened. You see concern etched on their faces. The breath that they've been holding released. And then the realization sets in that something is wrong. At that point, all that remained was...
Flight dynamics officer that the vehicle has exploded. Flight director confirms that. We are looking at checking with the recovery forces to see what can be done at this point. Contingency procedures are in effect.
Edward and Grace Corrigan. They're about 3.5 miles away from the area of the launch pad, in the VIP launch area.
Looking at the contingency operations and awaiting word from any recovery forces in the downrange field.
Families of the astronauts normally in the grandstand.
Tom, as John Zarella pointed out from the Cape earlier, when all of us first saw the blast, there was a moment of stunned silence and disbelief. Many people perhaps did confuse it with the, is it the booster rockets?
The solid rocket booster separation, which
but it was
really, a little later.
It was far too early and far too big an explosion. And it took a while, I'm sure, for it to sink in the minds of the parents and school children.
There you see Mr. and Mrs. Corrigan still standing, saying a silent prayer. Those are Christa McAuliffe's parents.
It's Edward and Grace Corrigan. Mrs. Corrigan had said in an earlier interview with CNN that she would be thrilled to be the one to be up there herself, that she once took flying lessons just because she liked the adventure of it. They'd always encouraged their daughter to be adventurous and to go for it, in her words.
Tom, the area that we were just watching, the bleachers where people were watching and photographing the launch, who was allowed in there?
That is the VIP section, invited guests for this launch. I myself received an invitation from Michael Smith, who was the pilot on this flight, to sit in these same bleachers and to watch his launch. Michael Smith has been a guest here on CNN before on our launch coverage and sent me a special invitation to go.
That would then include family members of the astronauts?
It includes family members. I understand there was a delegation from China of 100 people, school children from New Hampshire.
Approximately 28.64 degrees north.
Challenger's pilot, as Tom just said, was Mike Smith, 40 years old. He's a commander in the U.S. Navy. He's from Beaufort, North Carolina, a graduate of the U.S. Naval Academy. He served in Vietnam, is married, and has 3 children. And we had an interview with him here on CNN back in July. Let's play that for you.
Okay, how important is the Halley satellite launch? I mean, what are you going to be able to do with that?
Well, the satellite is very important. If you talk to the folks that have put together the experiment from the University of Colorado, they're hoping to get some really valuable information. As Ron mentioned this morning in the press conference, the comet is at its closest approach to the sun during the period that we're going to be observing it with the experiment, and hopefully that's going to be the period where it has the most activity in terms of throwing off water or whatever it's made out of. And the spectrometers that are on the Spartan-Halley comet or the Spartan-Halley satellite are hopefully going to be able to give us the information to tell us what that material is made of, and from that, of course, we can go back, since the comets are remnants of the formation of the universe, hopefully how some of that process worked. So it's very important to us, and it's very important that we actually deploy the satellite and pick it up on schedule and without a lot of problems, because all the data that satellite gathers while it's out doing its mission is going to be contained on the satellite itself. There's no telemeter data coming back to the ground or anything, so we have to deploy it and pick it up.
Isn't that going to be the tricky part, is making sure you pick it up? I mean, what we were talking about earlier in the press conference, it's going to be night and finding the thing.
Well, it's going to be night as we approach the target. As we pass about 2,000 feet to 4,000 feet below the target, it will be night. But as we come up in front of the target on its velocity vector, the sun should just be coming over the horizon, and we should have a good view of the satellite at that point. And once we have stabilized on the velocity vector, we practiced it many times. Dick will be moving the shuttle in towards the satellite, and we'll put it about 35 feet over the bay, and Judy hopefully will pick it up with the arm. It'll be in the right orientation. If for some reason its attitude system does fail, it has some magnetic torquers that can put it in an attitude that'll allow us to pick it up with the arm. We also have some backup plans in case the arm is not working, or the satellite is moving a little more than we would like, to send Ellison, Onizuka, and Ron McNair out EVA, and Dick will actually fly the satellite down to where they can pick it up and put it in the bay. So we have some backup plans to pick that satellite up if there's anything wrong with either the orbiter or the satellite itself.
Yeah, because you don't get many chances to look at the the comet.
No, and if, like I said, if we don't get the satellite back, we don't have any data.
Yeah. Does it concern you, or does it concern the other astronauts that so much of the spotlight has been on Christa? Everything seems to be focusing on her, and we talk about teacher in space rather than, you've got a TDRS satellite, you've got Hughes doing the experiments really that may help in the design of future satellites. You're going to be looking at Halley's Comet. It's an important mission, but most of all the spotlight is on her.
Well, I don't think it concerns us. Once we knew the teacher was going to be on the flight, I think everyone expected all the interest and everything to go exactly that way. And that's probably the way it should be, since she is going to be doing something on the flight which hasn't never been done before. And hopefully she's going to be doing the things that she mentioned earlier in the press conference this morning, and that is allowing teachers and students to experience this experience that you have in space, and hopefully transmit some of that enthusiasm to some of the students. I don't mean to minimize the other parts of the mission. They're very important. The TDRS satellite is going to give us a lot more capability, certainly, than we have now to communicate with orbiters, and hopefully in the future the space station. And the Spartan-Halley is going to do some good scientific research, and Greg's projects are certainly important and will influence, I think, satellite design for many years to come.
Yeah, and, as you mentioned, she's going to get, hopefully, a lot of students interested in space and becoming astronauts. How did you get interested? Because there was no teacher in space to spur you.
I guess, as far back as I can remember, all I ever wanted to do was fly. And when I was a young kid coming up, of course, the space program was just getting started, and my interest just naturally from the flying aspects went over to wanting to fly into space. And it's just something that I've wanted to do all my life. And I don't know how I got interested. I can't tell you. I just have always been interested in doing flying. So to me, it was just something that came
natural
naturally.
evolution, yeah, and especially for this kind of craft. It's not like the rockets that we've got sitting outside at the front gate where you just really just ride, but at least, I mean, there are controls.
That's
and
right.
you are...
You know, it launches like a rocket, and while it's on orbit, it is a spacecraft, and then it transitions from a spacecraft back to a real airplane for landing, so that's very exciting.
There were 7 people aboard the Space Shuttle when the disaster struck shortly after launch this morning at Kennedy Space Center. The spacecraft commander was Francis R. Dick Scobee. He was born May 19, 1939. He was in the Air Force. He fought in Vietnam. He'd logged about 6,500 hours in 45 different kinds of aircraft. Scobee was pilot of the STS-51 Challenger mission in 1984. That was the mission which retrieved and repaired aboard the shuttle the ailing Solar Maximum Mission satellite.
There were 2 women on board this flight of the Space Shuttle Challenger. One of them was astronaut Judith Resnik. She's 36 years old, a classical pianist who earned a doctorate in electrical engineering from the University of Maryland. After college, Resnik was a research scientist for RCA, and then at the National Institutes of Health, and later for Xerox. She was selected as an astronaut back in 1978, born and raised in Akron, Ohio, and has a bachelor's degree from Carnegie Mellon University. Resnik trained on the shuttle's robot arm during her first flight. That was in 1984. She used the arm to delicately break away a chunk of ice that had built up on the Space Shuttle Discovery. Resnik was single, 36 years old.
The other woman aboard was Christa McAuliffe. She was 37 years old, a Concord, New Hampshire high school English teacher, also taught American history. She was selected as the primary candidate for the NASA Teacher in Space project in July 1985. She began her training last September and had completed it nominally, as NASA says, normally, in time for today's launch. She was born in Boston, graduated from Framingham State College. She had a master's degree in education from Bowie State College in Bowie, Maryland. She had a 9-year-old daughter who, along with her husband, was watching this morning's launch at Kennedy Space Center, along with her parents.
Also aboard today's shuttle mission, Air Force Lieutenant Colonel Ellison S. Onizuka, 39 years old, a former aerospace engineer and pilot who taught courses at the Elite Air Force Test Pilot School in California. Born in Hawaii, has 2 degrees from the University of Colorado, was selected by NASA to be an astronaut in 1978. A crew member on the secret Department of Defense space shuttle flight last January. This was his 2nd space flight. He's married to the former Lorna Leiko Yoshida of Hawaii and had 2 children, Janelle, who's 16, and Darian, age 10.
Gregory Jarvis was 42 years old. He was a payload specialist aboard this morning's shuttlecraft. He was born in August of 1944 in Detroit. He graduated from State University of New York at Buffalo with a degree in electrical engineering. He'd worked at Raytheon in Bedford, Massachusetts, designing circuits on missiles. Later, as a communications payload engineer in the Satellite Communications Program Office, Jarvis worked on advanced tactical communications satellites. He was again, on this Challenger mission, assigned the role of payload specialist.
36-year-old Ronald E. McNair was doing research on lasers at the time he was selected to be an astronaut. Born and raised in Lake City, South Carolina, the doctorate of science from the Massachusetts Institute of Technology. Joined the astronaut program in 1979, made his first space flight in 1984. Married to the former Cheryl Moore of Jamaica, New York, they had 2 children.
We have to interrupt Marianne for a second. We're going to return to Mission Control. NASA is providing us with more information on what is happening off Kennedy Space Center.
We're unable to get the rescue teams, the search and rescue teams, delayed in getting into the area because of debris continuing to fall from very high altitudes for as long, almost as an hour after ascent. Those teams in place now in the search area. information as it becomes available to us.